Welcome to VR Me Up devlog number 8. This is following on from where I left off last devlog, where I was showing you how I went about optimizing VRoidStudio VRM models so they ran a little bit better in VR. By just setting some of the VRoidStudio export options, we managed to almost halve the file size and load times and significantly save on the amount of memory the models were taking up. So let's see if we can reduce this even more by manually editing it in Blender. Here we go. So first off, you're going to have to make sure that you have the VRM add-on for letting you import and export VRM models. If you don't have it, then you can download it off the internet. Then just import the model into Blender. I'm using the model that had already been optimized by using some of the VRoidStudio optimization settings. It may take a little while to import. Once it's imported, it should appear in the viewport with both the model mesh and the rig visible. I'm assuming that you know how to use Blender, so I'm not going to go into the details of everything I'm doing, but you should be able to work it out. So this is going to be broken into 3 steps. The first step is we're going to reduce the texture memory size by reducing the texture sizes in the model. The second thing is we're going to reduce the mesh memory usage by removing, decimating, or optimizing the mesh. And in the third one, we're going to be reducing the processing power that's required to display the model in the browser. Now, this step does remove functionality from the model that you may want to keep in. So you might want to skip step 3 if you want to keep, for example, the hair movement or the clothes moving around the model when the model's animated. In the last devlog, I was using the Play Canvas model viewer to look at some of the model statistics. I'm going to be using that again to compare the results of the optimization. But there is another useful tool on the 3VRM GitHub page that is great for testing the model along with animations to make sure that nothing is seriously broken. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. Back in Blender, with our model loaded, open up an image view pane for the model. The number of images for this model may vary depending on the VRoidStudio options that we use to export the model. We're going to resize all of these images, but keep an eye on the actual original model as you do this, because it's going to have an effect on the quality of the textures in the model. Open each of the images and resize them. The original size will be pretty large. As you resize the images, watch the effect on the model to make sure that you're happy with the results. If not, just hit Ctrl-Z and undo the resize and try a different resolution. You can sometimes get away with reducing the textures quite significantly, especially if the actual resulting texture isn't very large on the model. This particularly applies to the face. You can see I've reduced the texture size by a lot, and it has very little effect on the look of the face. The textures that are going to have the most visual impact on the look of the model are those associated with the clothing, so try not to reduce those as much. If you make it too small, then don't worry, just hit Ctrl-Z to undo the changes and try a larger resolution. Remember, keep the texture sizes to a power of 2, like 256, 512, or 1024. In some cases, the textures might be blank or appear very blocky, in which case it's okay to make those textures very small. For example, in this case, I just made it 8 by 8. Don't forget to resize the thumbnail. It's actually quite large and takes up a lot of memory, and you don't really need it. Once you're happy with the results, just save all the images and then export the model as a VRM file. And have a look at the changes in the Play Canvas viewer. It's always good to see what the actual results look like in a web browser. Don't forget that to look at the model in Play Canvas, you're going to have to change the extension to GLB. That's a GLTF binary formatted file. So you can see from the results that we've managed to reduce the file size again by half to about 4.7 megabytes, but we had a significant reduction in the texture VRAM from 110 megabytes down to 5.5 megabytes. We've also had a little bit of an improvement in load times. Once you have had a look at the model in Play Canvas, test it in the 3 VRM animation viewer just to make sure that it looks and moves as you would expect. You can drag and drop the VRM model and an FBX animation into the window to test it. You can download FBX animations from a site like Mixamo. They work really well. In the next step, we're going to be optimizing the mesh. This can be broken down into a few sub-steps, but essentially we're going to be fixing up some of the errors like you can see in the feet and the pants, and optimizing the mesh and removing some unnecessary polygons. In this case, the mesh is essentially two parts. There's the body and the head. And I always find the head the best place to start because there's a lot of really quick wins in reducing the polygon count. The face mesh for the avatars is very dense, so using a decimate modifier to reduce the number of polygons can have a significant impact. Don't forget to turn on the statistics so you can keep track of the number of polygons in your model. But there's also a few items in the mesh that you probably don't need, and that's in the mouth. If you're not using the mouth animations, then go into the back of the head. You can select the parts of the mouth using L and then just delete them with X. As you can see from this, we've managed to reduce the polygons by about 1,000. Next, you can use the decimate operation to remove some of the other polygons. Be careful with this value, it can have a huge impact on the model. You can turn it from something that looks like a face into just an individual polygon in a matter of seconds. So be careful. I find for the face, a value of around 0.2 works quite well as it keeps the shape of the nose and the eyes. Once you're finished with the head, you can return to the body. You can spend ages optimizing the body mesh. There's so much to it, but there are a few quick wins that I'll show you. First off, if you hide the head and you show the body mesh again, you'll see that the back of the head is still shown. So if you just select L, you can remove that from the model. That can save you a few polygons. One of the most noticeable problems with the model is the way that some of the polygons appear to be poking through the other polygons. This is especially noticeable at the feet. You can see why this is by turning on X-ray mode. The model is made up of different layers. For example, the legs, and then the pants are on top of the legs, or the feet, and the shoes are on top of the feet. So what we need to do is we need to remove those underlying layers. This can be done using L to select the connected vertices and just removing the faces. Pay attention when you're fixing up the feet to the toenails. They're small meshes and they take up valuable space. The same can happen with the fingernails on the hands. A good way to make sure you've got everything is to select the external meshes, and instead of removing them, just hide them with H. This will reveal any underlying meshes and you can just delete them using X. There's a similar problem here where the inlay of the coat is poking through the exterior of the coat. So you can select the inlay using L and just remove them. As I mentioned earlier, there are actually fingernails on these models and they can be removed to free up a little bit more space. I just box select the hands and then do Shift L to deselect the hand, and that leaves the fingernails, and then you can just remove the fingernails. Once you've removed all the meshes poking through other things and unwanted meshes, you can try running decimate just to reduce the model polygons a little bit more. Just remember to deselect the hands. Don't decimate the hands because I find that you're looking at the hands when the model is in VR, and so you want a decent number of polygons in those hand models. One last thing I like to do is to turn off X-ray mode and then use box select to select all the visible polygons. So just scroll around the model and try to find all the visible surfaces just by box selecting them. Once you've selected all these visible meshes, if you then invert the selection and remove the polygons, this can remove polygons that may be under other polygons that you will never see. Once you've finished removing all the unwanted polygons, don't forget to run cleanup and merge by distance. This will merge together any duplicate vertices and once again free up a little bit of space. Now we've removed some polygons and cleaned up the model a bit, it's time to export and have a look at it again in Play Canvas and have a look at the results of the polygon counts, load times. The number of triangles has been reduced, and this has had an additional effect of significantly reducing the file size and improving the load time. Don't forget to test the avatar with the 3 VRM example and an animation to make sure that you're still happy with the results. In this last step, we're going to be removing all the unnecessary bones. This will reduce the amount of CPU processing that is required to animate the avatar and hopefully speed it up a little. For example, this character doesn't have a skirt or the hair isn't long, so it doesn't need all these bones. Just a warning, removing bones from the avatar will affect the animation quality of the clothes and of the hair. So you may choose to skip this step. Start by removing the bones for the skirt and the hair. Make sure you don't remove any of the body or head bones, as they're required for running and walking and dancing, etc. Here I'm just using L to select all the bone loops. It makes it a bit easier to select the hair, and just X to remove them. Once you've removed the bones, just remove all the colliders. They're no longer required, as there's nothing really to collide with. Finally, you have to remove the links between the bones and the colliders, and this is done by going to the Object VRM settings down into Spring Bone. So just remove all the spring bone colliders, the spring bone collider groups, and all the spring bone springs. I've sped it up here because it can take quite a while. There's quite a number of them. It's really important to test the results of your changes using something like the 3 VRM example or your own software. I've intentionally left a problem in this avatar so that I can show you how to fix it if you see it. You can see this in the hair. As the character moves, the hair seems to lag behind. This is because we've removed the bones that control that part of the hair. This can happen with clothing as well. A simple way to fix this for the hair is to just go back into the model and select all the hair. Then go to the Object Data Properties and scroll up in the vertex groups till you find the head vertex group. Then make sure you have all the polygons selected and make sure the weight is set to 1, and then just hit Assign. And this will assign all the hair to the head vertex group. Now, when you apply the run animation or walk animation to the model, you should see everything moving as one. This can also happen with clothing, in which case you may need to do some more complex vertex painting to get the results you want. Removing the bones has had a small impact on the load times, but not a noticeable change to anything else. Overall, however, you can see a reduction in file size to about 7% of the original, and a significant reduction in the texture and mesh memory. When using the avatars on low-spec VR hardware or in a web browser, this can greatly improve performance, especially when you have multiple avatars on the screen at the same time. I hope you found this useful. I know it's been a bit long, but there's been a lot in there. And remember, always check the resulting avatar to make sure you're happy with it. Ultimately, it's whatever you want to do. So please hit the like or the subscribe button, and I'll see you online. VR me up.